October's nearly over. Welcome back to Lizard of Doom. I am Max. I have got 4 effects to show you this week that I'm using on my Ironjawz for this October that you can use on any of your Warhammer characters. They're all kind of relevant for most armies. So let's get straight into them. Remember to subscribe and tick on my like button, please. Oh yeah! And then we will have a look at our first couple, which are different types of OSL. This is the new blacksmith for the Ironjawz. He is a lovely little model with lots of nice details. I did enjoy painting the apron. And the thing we're going to focus on this model is the fire on his back here. This needs to be glowing and kind of illuminating that whole area. So let's get to it. First of all, this bit needs to be the brightest area, so I'm going to paint that with white. This is Duncan Rhodes' Too Thin Coats White Star. It is a lovely white, and I'm using the recommended Too Thin Coats. Once I have done this, we'll move on to the area around it. We're going to want to add a little base coat for the glow to really sell that it's brighter around this flame. This is what we've got when we've done a couple of coats, and we'll now move on to a little bit of airbrushing. Using the same paint thinned a lot through the airbrush, we'll achieve a little gradient effect around here. Now I'm just aiming around the flame and using very little trigger motion to get that area build up. I do want to get this quite nice and bright, so I'm going to have quite a lot of this sprayed around the flame. Not too much at any one time, just little bit by little bit. And we'll end up with something like this. Now I've got Magmadroth Flame Contrast Paint, very thin down with water in the airbrush. I'm just going to be hitting this area, giving it the nice orange glow of the fire and the main colour of this flame. Little bit by little bit, I'm going to do a couple of coats of this. This isn't going to be one shot and done. This is going to take a little bit of time, letting it dry and going again.
Yeah.
Till I achieve this. This is a nice deep orange around the middle here, and a nice glow effect, leading off that white area we sprayed onto the normal areas around it. But the problem with this fire is it's not brighter in the centre. When you're painting fire, it's important to put the brightest points in the centre of the fire, not towards the edges of the flame, because the centre is where the fuel is burning. I'm doing this with some more White Star. This is very thin now, very watery, making kind of a thick wash consistency with this. We're going to put a wash over the base of this flame. Allowing this to pool around the base of the flame is how I'm going to create the next brightest areas, using more contrast paint. Contrast paint is great for this because it is very heavily pigmented, but also transparent. You could also use acrylic inks, they are also very good for this, as they also have a nice transparent quality to them. Little controlled dabs here and there, making sure the brightest parts of this flame are exactly where I want them to be, in the bucket that it's burning in and underneath the main parts of the flames reaching up his back. There we go, that'll do, I will leave it there. It doesn't have to be very neat because we're going over this with Imperial Fist Contrast Paint. This paint has changed the game painting yellow. Before this paint, yellow was a difficult colour to get the nice coverage and the brightness. But this paint does it in one. If you're doing something yellow, I do recommend using Imperial Fist Contrast Paint over white. It will be the brightest yellow you have ever painted in your life in one go. With that done, it's looking nice and hot in the centre there. Some of the yellow has splashed over onto the surrounding areas as well, but because I was being super controlled with it, it's not as much as the orange. Now I just put a few more white hot areas in the middle of this flame, and we are done. Quick, simple fire. There we go. Complete. Nice little hot stove for my blacksmith to be smelting his metal in. You can see how it's brighter at the bottom here. This is very important, as I explained, for making it look hotter at the base. Now on to a much easier OSL with only really 2 steps to it. This is my War Chanter. We need to paint those bones in a magical kind of way. So using a neon OSL, it's going to be a lovely way to do that. This is very quick compared to the fire one. These eyes are going to be the focus of the OSL. These are going to be the bits that are glowing the most. So, much like the fire one, I'm going to use a little bit of White Star, just get in there And I'm going to paint them all angles all around because I want to leave a little dark line around the edge of this glow in that recess, so that when I go back over it with the neon paint, this area is still denoted from the other areas around it. It'll give it a nice little bit of refinement. There we go. Very simple, very quick. Now, bring back the airbrush. This time I am using Army Painter's Fluo paints. This is their neon yellow. I'm just going to give the eye area a very thin coat of it. I don't want to go too much in this first blast. Again, I'm going to do little bit by little bit. Let that dry and go again. As you can see, it is starting to glow. On the next coat, I did it again and I went a bit strong with this coat. I was a bit annoyed that I went too much. My trigger control is getting there. I am trying to improve airbrushing and stray away from the liquid mask, but this was too much. So, while it was still wet, I grabbed my paintbrush and I got to removing some. Now this is a damp paintbrush, not a wet paintbrush. You don't want beads of water rolling off and spoiling the rest of your miniature. I used it to wick away the top areas and bits I didn't want to be glowy. And it worked. I think this actually looks better for my mistake. I think I wouldn't have gone as bright as this on purpose, but I like how it looked in the end, and that is all that matters. Wicking bits away and wiping them on my thumb just for quick ease of use, because speed is key here. Speed is key. We need to work fast and leave the glow where we want it and remove it where we don't. This second bone, it had started to dry a bit more, so it was a little bit more of a challenge, but it was not too dry. I had saved the day just in time. And when we are finished, we'll have some lovely glowing bones. This is perfect for a little magical effect on an inanimate object like this. Two very different but very easy OSLs with very similar techniques to achieve them. One a little bit harder and a bit more in depth, and one a little bit simpler. Now we're going to move on to a lovely nebula effect on this next piece. I wonder what bit of this model still needs painting. Maybe it's that big plume of black smoke. Now this is something I have done before on a miniature, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'm going to do a nebula effect on this black smoke, but I want it to be a blood red nebula to go with my dark red armour of my orc army. I start by airbrushing a little bit of white just over the top. I'm trying to get that variance again when I go over it with more contrast paint. Now I'm taking 4 parts contrast medium to 1 part contrast paint. This is Flesh Tearers Red, a very, very blood red. It looks like a wound on my finger when I test it. This is blood red. I can see why this is Flesh Tearers Red. Now the reason I'm using it this thin is because I want to build up coats. The first one you'll see looks very patchy, but with contrast paint, especially Flesh Tearers Red, I've found it very, very opaque for a contrast paint. I want this to build up to a nice velvety red, light at the top, dark at the bottom. So I'm going very thin and building up those coats. I think it did take me 4 coats in the end to reach the effect I wanted with this stuff, but it was worth it doing this way rather than just one blast over the top and going too red too quick. And once the first coat was done, it did look like this. Very patchy, not very good at all. Yeah. More coats necessary, but it does look disgusting. If you want to do a disgusting glaze over something, I recommend this, like maybe a bleeding, putty Nurgle miniature. This would be fantastic for that. And there we go. 4 coats total led to this velvet smooth transition between light red at the top and a nice rich red at the bottom. It is now ready for the stars to be painted on top of this blood red nebula. Using 2 thin coats of white star again, I placed little dots on the raised lumps of the smoke. You do not want to place them in the cracks or underneath, as this will add brightness where you don't want it to be. Yes, it makes sense to be putting them all over this if this is a nebula or a galaxy, but to your eye it will read as light where there should be dark. Using a very fine brush, I coated all of the upper lumps of this smoke with these stars. This is the first step heading towards the galaxy effect we are after in this miniature. I wanted this to look like a magical, mystical portal smoke that led out into the void where he was pulling his wild war magic from. Once that was done, we are left with this. You can leave it here if you want. I've done some smaller and some larger ones as brighter or closer stars. And you can leave it there if you're happy. The next step is using an even finer brush and putting tiny crosses across some of the larger stars. You can put them on the small stars, but it works better on the larger stars. You want to place these all the same way up, so if you've gone like I have, straight down and straight across, this is the direction you should place all other stars on the rest of your miniature, as if you start to place them off to the side, the flares don't look right. I placed one slightly at the wrong angle at one point, and that one stands out to me when I look at this miniature now in the future. I started to lose brush control as it was getting late at this point when I was painting this miniature, so I did end up calling it here and picking it up again the next day. If you're starting to get tired, you will lose brush control. So make sure you know when to call it a day and go to bed, because you don't want your miniature to suffer because you are tired. We want this to be the best looking we can. So after painting a few stars, deciding I wasn't quite on top of my game, I called it and picked it up again tomorrow. After I'd painted the rest of the crosses in, it looked something like this. You don't want to pick too many, just every now and then, maybe one per 2 or 3 bumps in the smoke, and that will be enough. The last step is Lugganath Orange as some other smaller stars in the background dotted on. I'm using Lugganath Orange because I have done a red nebula. If you have used a blue nebula, maybe some very, very light blue would do, or, theme it to your colour choice. This is to make it look like these are more in the nebula, as they'll have a taint of the colour that you're doing. And after this, the nebula effect is complete. It's very quick and very simple, as are all of these techniques I'm showing you here today. This is how to take your characters to that next step really easily. With the final placement of stars, we have a finished wizard. Lovely and ready for the tabletop, my wizard is producing his intergalactic war magic.
Ready to get cranked in with the rest of the boys now.
And now for the final effect, I'm bringing back the big hog that I painted last week. He's back. Actually, everyone, leave a name for the big hog. I haven't named this big hog, so if you can think of a good name for the Trunk Stompers big hog, let me know in the comments below. The final technique is a bit of hog slobber. Your mum loves a slobbery hog, so here is mine ready to be slobbered on. The mouth area is where we're focusing, obviously. We will be bringing back a hobby staple Yoo-Hoo glue. I used this in one of my other October videos to make blood, but we're going to be stringing it between his teeth and making him look drooly and gross. We don't have much working time as Yoo-Hoo glue starts to create these strings immediately, so we need to use one of these bamboo skewers that you can buy from a supermarket and start placing it in the hog's mouth. The stringing straight away can be a bit of an issue, but if you spin the stick, I've found it cuts them off a little bit better. This is the best angle of my recording I found to show you this. This can be a bit of trial and error. You need to start where you want the slobber to start, obviously, press a little bit and then drag to where you want the slobber to end and kind of wipe it off. But then if you get another string like this, you can try and attach it somewhere else on the model, or pull it like I did and ruin the first bit you did. But this Yoo-Hoo glue is very tacky for a long time, so you can try and fix it after the fact. It does not go off immediately. I don't really know what Yoo-Hoo glue would be good for gluing apart from slime effects on miniatures, because it doesn't seem very strong. If you have used Yoo-Hoo glue not on a miniature, please tell me what you've used it on and if it's actually worked, because when this is done, you can just pull it off by hand if you don't like it. Max, leave stuff alone when it's done, don't mess with it, because you always make it worse. Don't keep working on it, know when to call it quits. Oh, that turned out alright actually. There we go. One more strand of slobber down at the front. But now we have a lovely slobbery hog. Whoa, hey! There is one more step on this slobber technique to really sell it. You need to go and grab your pot of Ardcoat or any gloss varnish that you like to use and give a nice coating of that right deep in his gob. You need to make everything else in here seem like it's slobbery and shiny as well. But make sure that the Yoo-Hoo glue is completely set before you do this, because they do interact together and it will mist up the Yoo-Hoo glue. Do not touch it. Or maybe even do this before. You could do this either way around, it doesn't really matter. Whether you found the hog slobber useful, or maybe whether you found the Wizard's Nebula useful. Please consider sharing this video with your friends if they're working on something you think this could be suitable for, as I'm trying to reach 10k subscribers before New Year. Maybe you know someone who's working on OSL and these cheeky little techniques will be a quick route to their goals. I am very proud of how these come off, and I am excited to have these in my Orc army. Thank you to my lovely Patreons, you saw them then over the end shots. The link is up there, shablam, if you would like to help support this channel and help me make these silly things that I make. October is over when I say it is over. Next week, it will not be October anymore, but I will be painting up right until the last day of October, and I will hopefully be bringing you an army, and I will hopefully be bringing you an army showcase as next week's video. So stay tuned for that. I've got a fair few boys to paint up, but hopefully I'll get there. Right, that is all from me. Remember, it is not a pile of shame, it's a pile of future fun. See you next time, kids. Subscribe!